My name is Avery Dixon. I'm 33 years old, and I had just spent 7 years working brutal 70-hour weeks as a financial analyst to afford my dream downtown penthouse, with floor-to-ceiling windows and city views that represented every sacrifice I had made to build financial independence and professional success. What I didn't anticipate was that my family celebration to show them my new home would transform into a nightmare when my parents, Russell and Carol, publicly demanded that I immediately hand over the property to my 27-year-old unemployed sister Morgan, who had never held a job longer than 4 months, but somehow deserved to live in luxury accommodations she had never worked to afford. What made this confrontation infinitely more devastating was the moment when I refused their absurd demand, and my father's open-handed slap sent my diamond earring flying across the marble floor, while 20 family guests watched in horrified silence, followed by my mother's declaration that I was selfish and cruel for not helping my struggling sister by giving away the home I had sacrificed my 20s to purchase. What my family didn't know was that their willingness to commit physical assault at a family party to force property transfer had just triggered pre-arranged legal protocols that would result in criminal charges, permanent restraining orders, and immediate eviction from the penthouse they had just demanded I give away. The luxury penthouse that would become the focal point of my family's most outrageous demands and violent behavior represented 7 years of financial discipline, career dedication, and strategic planning that had transformed me from entry-level financial analyst to senior portfolio manager with substantial income and investment expertise. My career path in financial analysis had been challenging and competitive, requiring intense focus on market trends, client relationship management, and continuous professional development that often meant sacrificing social activities and personal time to build the expertise and reputation that generated high income and advancement opportunities. Financial analysis requires both technical expertise and client trust. My mentor Catherine Webb had explained during my early career years, and building that combination requires years of dedicated work and proven results that demonstrate your value to clients and firms. The 70-hour weeks that characterized my 20s had been necessary for career advancement in an industry where competition was fierce and opportunities for promotion required demonstrating commitment, expertise, and results that exceeded client expectations and firm benchmarks. Avery's dedication to her clients and her analytical skills have made her one of our most valuable portfolio managers, my firm's senior partner had written in my most recent performance review. Her ability to identify investment opportunities and manage risk has generated substantial returns for clients and significant revenue for the firm. The professional recognition and financial compensation that accompanied my career success had created the opportunity to purchase a luxury penthouse in a prestigious downtown building, fulfilling a goal I had been working toward since my early career years, when I first saw the building and imagined what living there would represent. The penthouse itself was spectacular, featuring 2,200 square feet of living space with panoramic city views, custom finishes throughout, a chef's kitchen with premium appliances, master suite with spa bathroom, and amenities that reflected both my professional success and my appreciation for quality living spaces. This penthouse represents the pinnacle of urban luxury living, the real estate agent had said during my initial viewing, with architectural design and finishes that create an exceptional living environment for discerning buyers who appreciate quality and location. The purchase price of $1.8 million had required substantial down payment and careful financial planning, but my income as a senior portfolio manager and my years of disciplined saving had made the purchase feasible without overextending my financial resources or compromising my investment portfolio. "You're making a sound financial decision," my financial advisor had confirmed when reviewing the purchase. "The property is in an appreciating market area. Your income supports the mortgage comfortably, and the purchase doesn't compromise your retirement planning or investment strategy." The decision to host a family celebration at my new penthouse had been motivated by a desire to share my achievement with relatives who had supported my educational goals and witnessed my career development, though I should have anticipated that my family's patterns of favoring my sister might create complications. My relationship with my parents, Russell and Carol, had always been characterized by their differential treatment of their daughters, with Morgan receiving comprehensive financial support and emotional validation, while I was expected to be completely self-sufficient and independent from an early age. "Avery's always been so capable and independent," Carol would tell relatives, using language that made my self-reliance sound like a character trait, rather than acknowledging that independence had been required because family resources were being directed entirely toward subsidizing Morgan's lifestyle choices. Morgan's pattern of short-term employment and chronic unemployment had been enabled by our parents' willingness to fund her rent, car payments, credit card bills, and lifestyle expenses that far exceeded what her sporadic income could support independently. "Morgan is still finding her career path," Russell would explain when relatives questioned why a 27-year-old was completely financially dependent on parental support. "And we want to help her explore different opportunities until she discovers work that truly fulfills her." The characterization of chronic unemployment as exploring opportunities revealed my parents' fundamental inability to hold Morgan accountable for her lack of career development or financial responsibility, while simultaneously expecting me to achieve complete independence without any family support or assistance. "You don't need our help because you're doing so well on your own," Carol had said when I asked for assistance with college expenses. "But Morgan needs support because she's struggling to find her way in the world." The differential treatment had extended throughout our adult years, with Morgan receiving comprehensive financial subsidization, while I built my career through my own efforts and resources, creating stark differences in our lifestyles and financial security. My purchase of the luxury penthouse had apparently triggered something in my family's perception of fair resource distribution, as they seemed to view my success as evidence that I had more than I needed, while Morgan continued to struggle with housing and financial insecurity. "Avery has that expensive penthouse, while Morgan can barely afford rent," Russell had complained to relatives. "It doesn't seem fair that one daughter has so much, while the other has so little." The characterization of the wealth disparity as unfair, rather than recognizing it as the natural consequence of 7 years of disciplined work versus chronic unemployment, revealed my family's distorted understanding of how financial success is earned rather than distributed. The family celebration I had organized to show relatives my new home had been carefully planned with catering, beverages, and apartment tour arrangements that would showcase the space while celebrating this career milestone with people I had assumed would be happy about my success. "This is going to be a beautiful celebration of your achievement," my friend Jessica had said when helping me plan the event, "and your family will be so proud to see what you've accomplished through all your hard work." But what I hadn't anticipated was that my family's differential treatment patterns and their perception of my success as family resource rather than individual achievement would transform my celebration into a confrontation about property redistribution and entitlement claims that would escalate to physical violence. The family guests who arrived for the celebration included my parents, Morgan, several aunts and uncles, cousins and family friends who had known me throughout my career development, and who were ostensibly gathering to celebrate my professional success and new home. "This penthouse is absolutely stunning," relatives commented as they toured the space and admired the city views, custom finishes, and luxury amenities that represented my years of work and financial planning. But approximately 1 hour into the celebration, I noticed Russell and Carol having an intense private conversation with Morgan in the corner of the living room, with body language that suggested they were discussing something serious rather than enjoying the party atmosphere. Have you ever sensed that something was wrong at your own celebration, but couldn't quite identify what was being planned until it was too late to prevent the confrontation? That's exactly what I was experiencing as my parents and sister concluded their conversation and approached me with expressions that suggested they were about to make demands rather than offer congratulations. The confrontation that would permanently alter my relationship with my family was about to begin, and their sense of entitlement to my property would reveal character defects and values that would justify the criminal prosecution and permanent restraining orders I was about to pursue. The devastating confrontation that would expose my family's true priorities and their willingness to use violence to force property transfer began when Russell, Carol, and Morgan approached me together in the middle of my penthouse celebration, their coordinated presentation suggesting they had carefully planned what they were about to demand. "Avery, we need to talk to you about something important," Russell said with the authoritative tone he used when he expected compliance rather than discussion. "And we need you to understand that this is about family fairness and helping your sister during a difficult period." The language about family fairness immediately triggered my concern, because my parents had consistently used concepts of fairness to justify giving Morgan resources while expecting me to be completely self-sufficient without equivalent support or assistance. "Morgan is really struggling right now," Carol added, her voice taking on the emotional manipulation tone she employed when trying to guilt me into actions I didn't want to take. "And she needs help from family members who have been more fortunate in their career paths." The characterization of my career success as fortune, rather than the result of 7 years of disciplined work, revealed their fundamental misunderstanding of how financial achievement is earned, rather than distributed by luck or circumstances. "Morgan needs stable housing," Russell continued, "and we think the right thing for you to do as her sister is to give her this penthouse so she has a secure place to live while she continues looking for the right career opportunity." The casual way he suggested that I should give Morgan my $1.8 million penthouse was so absurd that I initially thought he was joking or testing my reaction, but his serious expression and Morgan's expectant face made it clear that this was a genuine demand they had coordinated before approaching me. "You want me to give Morgan my penthouse?" I asked, making sure I understood the magnitude of what they were demanding. "The home I spent 7 years working to afford? That I just purchased 3 months ago?" "You can afford to buy another property," Carol replied dismissively, "but Morgan doesn't have your income or resources, so she needs this penthouse more than you do." The logic that I should give away my home because I could theoretically afford to purchase another one was so fundamentally flawed that it revealed their complete lack of understanding about property ownership, financial planning, and the concept of earned versus given resources. "Morgan deserves to live somewhere nice," Russell added, "and you've always had everything easy while she struggled. This is your chance to help your sister and show that family means more to you than material possessions." The characterization of my career achievements as having everything easy, while Morgan's chronic unemployment was framed as struggling, revealed the distorted perception that had shaped their differential treatment of their daughters throughout our adult lives. "I'm not giving anyone my penthouse," I said firmly. "I worked 7 years to afford this home, and it's not a family resource to be redistributed based on your perception of fairness." The direct refusal of their demand created immediate tension in the group, as Russell's face reddened with anger, and Carol's expression shifted from manipulative pleading to hostile resentment about my unwillingness to comply with their expectations. "Avery, you're being incredibly selfish," Morgan said with the entitled tone that characterized her approach to family resources. "I need somewhere to live, and you have this huge, expensive penthouse that you don't even really need." The claim that I didn't need my own home because it was huge revealed Morgan's complete lack of understanding about property ownership and her assumption that my possessions should be available to her based on her self-assessed needs. "You have plenty of money to buy another place," Russell said, his voice rising with anger as he realized I wasn't going to simply comply with their demand. "But Morgan can't afford anything decent on her own. You should do the right thing and give her the keys to this penthouse." The escalation from suggestion to demand was creating an uncomfortable atmosphere as family guests began to notice the confrontation and move away from our conversation while trying to maintain the appearance of not eavesdropping on obvious family conflict. "I'm not giving Morgan my home," I repeated, "and I'm not going to discuss this further at my own celebration. If you want to continue this conversation, we can talk privately at another time." The attempt to establish boundaries and defer the discussion was immediately rejected by Russell, whose face was now flushed with anger, and whose body language suggested he was preparing to escalate the confrontation beyond verbal demands. "You're going to give Morgan those keys right now," Russell said with threatening emphasis, "because she needs this penthouse and you're being cruel by refusing to help your own sister." The characterization of property retention as cruelty revealed the twisted logic that had shaped my family's expectations about resource distribution, and their belief that my success created obligations to subsidize Morgan's lifestyle choices. "I'm not giving anyone anything," I said, feeling my own anger rising at their outrageous demands. and their refusal to accept my clear rejection of their property transfer scheme. What happened next occurred so quickly that I barely had time to process the violence before feeling the sharp pain across my face and watching my diamond earring fly across the marble floor as Russell's open-handed slap connected with enough force to send jewelry airborne. The physical assault in the middle of my family celebration, in front of 20 witnesses who watched in horrified silence, was so shocking and unacceptable that it fundamentally changed the nature of our conflict from family dispute to criminal behavior, requiring immediate legal intervention. "You will give Morgan those keys," Russell repeated after striking me, apparently believing that physical violence would force my compliance with demands that verbal pressure had failed to achieve. Carol's response to witnessing her husband physically assault their daughter was not to intervene or object, but to support his violence by immediately attacking me verbally for the refusal that had triggered Russell's criminal behavior. "You're selfish and cruel," Carol hissed at me while I stood there with my face burning from Russell's slap. "Your sister needs help and you have everything, but you won't share anything with family members who need your support." Morgan's reaction to watching her father assault me was equally revealing, as she stood expectantly with her hand extended as if the violence had settled the matter, and I would now give her my penthouse keys as they had demanded. The 20 family guests who had witnessed Russell's assault stood in shocked silence, with no one intervening to defend me or objecting to the violence they had just observed, creating a social atmosphere that suggested physical assault was acceptable family conflict resolution. Have you ever been physically assaulted by a parent while extended family members watched in silence, all because you refused to give away property you had worked years to afford? The pain of the slap was exceeded only by the realization that my family was willing to commit violence to force property transfer, revealing values that justified the criminal prosecution I was about to pursue. But their assumption that assault would force my compliance had just triggered prearranged legal protocols that would transform my penthouse celebration into a crime scene with criminal charges, restraining orders, and immediate eviction orders that would teach them what happens when you commit violence to steal someone's property. The moment of devastating clarity following Russell's assault was also the moment I realized that continuing this confrontation, or attempting family mediation, would be both dangerous and pointless. Because people willing to commit physical violence to force property transfer don't deserve negotiation. They deserve criminal prosecution and permanent restraining orders. Standing there with my face burning from Russell's slap while my family watched expectantly for me to comply with their demands, I made the calculated decision to leave immediately and activate the legal protocols I had established when I purchased the penthouse in a building with comprehensive security systems and legal resources. "I'm leaving," I said calmly, picking up my diamond earring from where it had landed on the marble floor and placing it in my pocket as physical evidence of the assault that 20 witnesses had observed. "You're not leaving until you give Morgan those keys," Russell said, apparently believing he could physically prevent my departure or force continued confrontation through intimidation and threats. "If you touch me again, you'll be arrested for assault," I replied, pulling out my phone while moving toward the penthouse entrance where my purse and car keys were located. The warning about arrest seemed to surprise Russell, who had apparently not considered that domestic violence committed in front of multiple witnesses might have legal consequences beyond just family conflict. "Avery, don't be dramatic," Carol called after me. "We're just trying to help Morgan get settled in a nice place. You don't need to make this into a legal situation." The characterization of physical assault as dramatic response, and the suggestion that I was creating a legal situation, rather than recognizing that Russell's violence had created criminal behavior, revealed their complete lack of understanding about assault consequences. I didn't respond to their continued demands or explanations, instead focusing on reaching my car in the building's secure parking garage, where I could safely activate the legal protocols that would transform their violent property grab into a criminal case with comprehensive documentation. The elevator ride to the parking garage gave me time to process what had just occurred and to prepare the sequence of actions that would ensure Russell faced immediate legal consequences while protecting me from further violence or property invasion attempts. My car's interior provided the secure location I needed to activate the three-part legal response I had established when purchasing the penthouse, beginning with the single icon on my phone that would simultaneously alert police, my attorney, and building security about the assault and property dispute. Emergency protocol activated. My phone screen confirmed. Police notification sent. Attorney contacted. Building security engaged. All parties have been notified of assault and property dispute requiring immediate response. The emergency protocol system had been established through my attorney's recommendation when I purchased the high-value property, creating pre-arranged legal responses for various scenarios, including family disputes, property invasion attempts, and violence that might occur during family visits. High-value property owners need comprehensive security protocols, my attorney Sandra Mitchell had explained, including immediate legal response capabilities for situations that require police intervention, restraining order activation, or property protection measures. The system I had activated would bring multiple forms of immediate legal response to my penthouse, while I waited safely in my car for confirmation that the situation was being addressed and that my family was being removed from the property. Within 15 minutes of activating the emergency protocol, my attorney called to confirm that legal representatives and police were en route to the penthouse with documentation and authority to address the assault, remove the family guests, and initiate criminal prosecution against Russell. The police will be arriving at your building within 10 minutes, Sandra confirmed, and I'm sending my associate Jennifer Hayes to serve immediate restraining order papers and building access revocation notices to your parents and sister. The comprehensive legal response would ensure that Russell faced immediate criminal consequences for assault while establishing permanent barriers preventing my family from accessing my home or attempting future property invasion or violence. Building security has been notified to document the assault scene and witness statements, Sandra continued, and they're preparing to enforce immediate eviction of all party guests from your penthouse under your authority as the property owner. The building security protocols meant that my family celebration was about to be transformed into a documented crime scene with formal witness statements, photographic evidence, and official reports that would support criminal prosecution and restraining order proceedings. I want Russell prosecuted for assault, I confirmed, and I want permanent restraining orders against Russell, Carol, and Morgan, preventing them from contacting me or accessing my building. We'll file comprehensive restraining orders tonight, Sandra replied, and the police will be arresting Russell for assault based on the multiple witnesses who observed the violence. The legal response was exactly what the situation required: immediate criminal consequences for violence, combined with permanent legal barriers preventing future contact or property invasion attempts by family members who had demonstrated their willingness to use force to steal my property. 28 minutes after I activated the emergency protocol, I received confirmation that police and legal representatives had arrived at my penthouse and were addressing the assault while preparing to remove all family guests from the property. Ms. Dixon, this is Officer Patricia Reynolds. The phone call began. We're at your penthouse now with your attorney's associate and building security. We've taken statements from multiple witnesses about the assault, and we'll be placing your father under arrest for battery. The confirmation that Russell was being arrested provided satisfaction that his violence was being treated as the criminal behavior it was, rather than being minimized as family conflict that should be resolved through mediation or forgiveness. Your attorney's associate is serving restraining order papers now, Officer Reynolds continued, and building security is documenting everyone's identity before requiring them to leave the premises immediately. The comprehensive response meant that my family's violent property grab was being addressed through appropriate legal channels while establishing permanent protections against future contact or property invasion attempts. Have you ever activated prearranged legal protocols that transformed a family assault into a criminal case with immediate arrests, restraining orders, and eviction proceedings? The satisfaction of watching entitled family members face real consequences for their violence exceeded anything I could have imagined when I first established the emergency response systems. But the most satisfying moment was still to come, as building security and legal representatives began the formal process of removing my family from the property they had just demanded I give away through threats and physical violence. The systematic destruction of my family's violent property scheme began when Jennifer Hayes, my attorney's associate, entered my penthouse celebration with documentation and legal authority, that would transform the social gathering into an evidence-documented crime scene requiring immediate witness cooperation and perpetrator removal. I'm Jennifer Hayes, representing Avery Dixon in legal matters related to this property, she announced to the assembled family guests who were still standing in shocked silence after witnessing Russell's assault and my departure. The professional legal presence immediately changed the atmosphere from family conflict to official legal proceeding, as guests realized they had witnessed criminal behavior that was now being formally documented and addressed through appropriate legal channels. I need everyone to remain in place while we document the assault scene and collect witness statements, Jennifer continued. Building security is securing the entrances, and no one will be permitted to leave until police have completed their investigation. The transformation of my celebration into a locked crime scene created visible panic among family members, who had apparently assumed that domestic violence would be treated as private family matter, rather than criminal behavior requiring formal investigation and witness statements. Russell Dixon, I'm serving you with immediate restraining order papers, Jennifer announced, approaching my father with legal documentation. You are hereby prohibited from contacting Avery Dixon or coming within 500 feet of her residence, workplace, or known locations. The restraining order papers made Russell's assault consequences immediately concrete, establishing legal barriers that would be enforceable through arrest and prosecution if he violated the court-ordered distance requirements. Carol Dixon and Morgan Dixon, you're also being served with restraining order papers, Jennifer continued, prohibiting contact with Avery Dixon and access to this building or surrounding properties. The extension of restraining orders to Carol and Morgan reflected their participation in the property demand scheme and their support for the violence that Russell had committed, making them complicit in the criminal behavior even though they hadn't personally struck me. Furthermore, Jennifer announced to all assembled guests, everyone present is being permanently banned from this building under the authority of building security and property owner rights. You have 5 minutes to collect any personal belongings and vacate the premises, or you will be charged with trespassing. The mass eviction order created immediate chaos as family members scrambled to gather their coats and belongings, while processing that their attendance at my celebration had resulted in permanent building access revocation and potential involvement in criminal proceedings. I need witness statements from everyone who observed the assault, Officer Reynolds announced, and anyone who leaves before providing a statement may be subpoenaed to provide testimony in criminal proceedings. The legal requirement for witness statements meant that family members who had watched Russell's violence in silence would now be required to formally document what they had observed, creating official records that would support prosecution regardless of any reluctance to testify against family. Russell's face had gone completely pale as he processed that his assault was being treated as serious criminal behavior rather than family conflict that could be smoothed over through apologies or family mediation. I didn't mean to hurt her, Russell said desperately to the police officers. We were just having a family discussion about property and things got heated. It was a mistake, not a crime. Domestic violence is a crime, Mr. Dixon, Officer Reynolds replied. And you committed battery in front of multiple witnesses who have confirmed that you struck your daughter with sufficient force to cause physical injury and property damage. The reference to property damage related to my diamond earring being knocked across the floor, creating additional evidence of the force Russell had used and the criminal nature of his assault. You're being placed under arrest for battery, Officer Reynolds continued, and you'll be transported to the police station for booking and processing. The handcuffs being placed on Russell's wrists created a visual representation of the consequences that violence brings, transforming my father from authority figure into criminal defendant, facing prosecution and potential jail time. Carol's reaction to watching her husband being arrested was not remorse or concern about the violence, but anger directed at me for pursuing legal consequences rather than accepting family mediation or forgiveness. Avery is destroying this family over a little argument, Carol said to the assembled guests, apparently attempting to minimize Russell's assault as a little argument, rather than acknowledging the criminal violence that had occurred. Mrs. Dixon, you're being served with restraining order papers, Jennifer interrupted, and your characterization of assault as a little argument will be noted in the legal proceedings. The documentation of Carol's minimization of violence would support the restraining order by demonstrating her lack of understanding about the seriousness of Russell's behavior and her likelihood of supporting future contact violations. Morgan's response to the legal proceedings was focused entirely on her own losses, rather than showing any concern about the violence or criminal behavior that had occurred. "This isn't fair," Morgan complained to anyone who would listen. "I just needed somewhere nice to live, and now Avery has gotten Dad arrested and banned us all from her building." The characterization of criminal prosecution as unfair and her focus on losing access to my penthouse, rather than acknowledging the violence, revealed Morgan's fundamental self-centeredness and her view that she was the victim of these proceedings. "Ms. Morgan Dixon, you're being served with restraining order papers," Jennifer said, "and you're required to immediately vacate these premises and maintain no contact with Avery Dixon." The legal requirements meant that Morgan's fantasy of obtaining my penthouse had not only failed, but had resulted in her permanent exclusion from the property and legal prohibition against any future contact or property demands. The systematic documentation of witness statements was revealing that every family guest had clearly observed Russell's assault, creating overwhelming evidence that would support criminal prosecution and make any defense claims of accident or misunderstanding impossible to maintain credibly. "I saw Mr. Dixon strike his daughter across the face with enough force to send her earring flying," one witness statement confirmed. "It was clearly intentional violence, not an accident or minor contact." The detailed witness descriptions were creating a comprehensive record that would ensure Russell faced appropriate criminal consequences while establishing the factual foundation for permanent restraining orders against the entire family. The 5-minute deadline for property evacuation was approaching, with building security prepared to begin trespassing proceedings against anyone who remained in the penthouse beyond the announced departure time. "All guests must exit the building immediately," building security announced. "Anyone remaining after the deadline will be photographed, documented, and subject to trespassing charges and permanent access revocation." The mass exodus of family members from my penthouse created a visual representation of the consequences their violent property scheme had generated, transforming my celebration into a crime scene that had resulted in arrests, restraining orders, and permanent building bans. Have you ever watched your entire family get evicted from your home while your father was being arrested for assaulting you? All because they demanded you give away property you had worked 7 years to afford? The satisfaction of seeing appropriate legal consequences exceeded any sadness about severing relationships with people who had demonstrated their willingness to use violence to steal my property. But the long-term consequences of their violent scheme would extend far beyond immediate arrests and restraining orders, as the criminal proceedings and permanent legal barriers would ensure they never again had the opportunity to demand my property or threaten me with violence. The permanent transformation of my relationship with family members who had committed assault to force property transfer was completed through comprehensive legal proceedings that resulted in criminal conviction, permanent restraining orders, and social consequences that ensured Russell, Carol, and Morgan understood the severity of their actions. Russell's criminal prosecution for battery proceeded through the court system with overwhelming evidence from multiple witnesses who had observed his assault, making any defense strategy impossible beyond attempting to minimize the severity of the violence or claim provocation that the evidence clearly contradicted. Mr. Dixon committed premeditated assault after his property demand was refused, the prosecutor argued during sentencing proceedings, striking his daughter with sufficient force to cause injury and property damage, while multiple witnesses observed the violence. The criminal conviction resulted in probation, mandatory anger management classes, community service requirements, and a permanent criminal record that would affect Russell's professional reputation and future background checks. "This conviction will remain on your record permanently," the judge informed Russell during sentencing, "and any future violence will result in imprisonment rather than probation." The permanent criminal record meant that Russell's moment of violence would follow him indefinitely, creating exactly the kind of long-term consequences that assault deserves, but doesn't always receive when families pressure victims to drop charges or accept apologies. The restraining orders that had been issued immediately after the assault were made permanent through court proceedings that established 5-year protection orders, preventing Russell, Carol, and Morgan from contacting me or approaching my residence, workplace, or known locations. Permanent restraining orders are appropriate given the violence and the property demands that motivated the assault, Judge Patricia Morrison ruled, and the orders will include provisions for criminal prosecution if any violations occur. The comprehensive nature of the restraining orders meant that my family was legally prohibited from any contact, creating enforceability through immediate arrest if they attempted to circumvent the court-ordered distance requirements. Building security had implemented permanent access revocation for Russell, Carol, and Morgan, with their photographs and identification information distributed to all security personnel, with instructions to immediately call police if they attempted to enter the building or surrounding properties. High-security buildings take restraining orders seriously, the building security director explained, and we've implemented comprehensive protocols ensuring that your family cannot access this property or contact you through building staff. The building-level protections created an additional layer of security beyond just legal restraining orders, ensuring that my home remained a safe sanctuary protected from family members who had demonstrated their willingness to use violence. The social consequences of the assault and subsequent legal proceedings spread through our extended family and professional networks, creating reputation damage for Russell, Carol, and Morgan that extended beyond just criminal records and legal restrictions. Everyone in the family knows that Russell assaulted Avery when she refused to give Morgan her penthouse, relatives reported, and people are horrified that parents would commit violence to force property transfer from their successful daughter to their unemployed daughter. The social stigma associated with domestic violence combined with the outrageous nature of their property demands created lasting damage to their reputation and relationships with extended family members who had witnessed or learned about the assault. "I can't believe Russell hit Avery over a penthouse demand," family members would say. It shows that their favoritism toward Morgan had reached a point where they were willing to commit crimes to give her property she hadn't earned. The public nature of the assault and the multiple witnesses who had observed the violence made it impossible for Russell, Carol, and Morgan to revise the narrative or claim that I had overreacted to a minor family dispute. My professional reputation was actually enhanced by the legal response to family violence, as colleagues and clients respected my willingness to pursue criminal prosecution rather than accepting family pressure to drop charges or minimize assault. Avery's response to domestic violence showed strong character and appropriate boundaries, my firm's senior partner noted, and her refusal to compromise on legal consequences demonstrates the kind of principled decision-making that makes her an excellent financial advisor. The professional validation of my legal response reinforced that appropriate boundaries with toxic family members was not just personally necessary, but professionally admirable, especially for women in high-earning careers where success might attract exploitative family demands. 2 years after the assault and subsequent legal proceedings, my life had been transformed by the elimination of toxic family relationships and the protection provided by permanent restraining orders that ensured no future contact or property demands. Removing violent people from your life creates space for genuine relationships, my therapist observed, and your legal protections allowed that removal to happen with appropriate consequences, rather than guilt or family pressure to forgive assault. The penthouse that had been the focus of my family's violent demands remained my peaceful sanctuary, protected by comprehensive security systems and legal barriers that ensured Russell, Carol, and Morgan could never access the property or make future claims on my achievements. The professional success I had built through 7 years of dedicated work continued flourishing without the stress of managing entitled family members who viewed my achievements as resources they deserved to claim through demands, manipulation, or violence. Your career advancement since removing toxic family relationships has been remarkable, Catherine noted during a mentor conversation, and the energy you were spending managing family drama is now available for professional growth and personal fulfillment. The wisdom of protecting yourself through immediate legal action when family members commit violence had been validated not just through criminal convictions and restraining orders, but through the peace and professional advancement that freedom from their entitlement and threats had enabled. Have you ever discovered that eliminating violent family members through criminal prosecution and restraining orders created peace that exceeded anything their presence had ever provided? Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to tolerate assault from people who believe family loyalty requires accepting violence to force property transfers. The judge's ruling, the criminal conviction, and the permanent restraining orders created exactly the outcome that domestic violence deserves: legal consequences, social stigma, and permanent separation that ensures violent behavior doesn't get rewarded through victim forgiveness or family mediation. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share your experiences in the comments below. Remember that family members who commit physical assault to force property transfer deserve criminal prosecution and permanent restraining orders, not family loyalty or negotiation. See you in our next story here on Her Sweet Revenge.